Fikile kweli shumi fighter nditifu magamnande ama fighter fikile.
Freedom fighters, when we speak of land expropriation without compensation for equal redistribution in use, it means that as young people particularly, we can now take up space in our hospitals, in our schools, in police stations, in making sure that gardening now becomes fashionable, subsistence farming now becomes a thing that we get to engage with, that we get to de-stress from, because we have a lot that we are going through as young people. And what happened on it, Nikki I noted that since population is growing, we had a government for the past 30 years where they have not done anything about population growth in terms of giving us houses, in terms of giving us space, assuming that our family is getting your typical nuclear family with the two kids, a mother and the father. Of my reality, siblings, and the environment is not conducive because we're all adults. You have your kids and their kids with their parents in one house, families as black people. But once we have land, I can go and have my own place with my own kids, and then it is dignity in black families because when this necessary. And then happen having a government of the EFF will allow us as black people to correct any economic injustice that happened when land dispossession happened. Whether we like it or not, our ancestors, they died. But and even history, unfortunately, is very distorted. Whenever we go in a school, with the 16th Mary Antoinette, but they never get to tell us how did land dispossession happen. 1652 years they arrived, but what happened between 1652 and the Sharpeville massacre, because there are a lot of blank pages, young people, so that we can understand that this movement and the economic freedom fighters, as much as we are saying we're the most radical organization, we also kids and mother and the father. Of my reality, siblings, and the environment is not conducive because we're all adults. You have your kids and their kids with their parents in one house, families as black people. But once we have land, I can go and have my own place with my own kids, and then it is dignity in black families because when this necessary. And then happen having a government of the EFF will allow us as black people to correct any economic injustice that happened when land dispossession happened. Whether we like it or not, our ancestors, they died. But and even history, unfortunately, is very distorted. Whenever we go in a school, with the 16th Mary Antoinette, but they never get to tell us how did land dispossession happen. 1652 years they arrived, but what happened between 1652 and the Sharpeville massacre, because there are a lot of blank pages, young people, so that we can understand that this movement and the economic freedom fighters, as much as we are saying we're the most radical organization, we're also lenient in saying this land expropriate without compensation, then we're going to distribute equally. We're not saying in eye for an eye. That land, we're not taking it the very same way they took it from us. We're saying through the constitution, let's take land back and let us live together. But then I have a question. Before I get to it, I almost forgot. I'm so sorry. I almost forgot. I wanted to also go back into the type of resources that we're going to have access to, the government that is going to have access to. Water, for instance, you get to find that our water infrastructure in South Africa is so messed up, and the way is so designed, you get to find that us as the majority of the people were excluded from it. Certain parts of South Africa where our people reside, they don't have access to it. Once you have access to land, you can then have access to geologists that from underground, where desalination can actually happen without government agents or no, it's a process. It's a state. State needs to have money for such. So before so that it can allow space for other people, pointing leasing of land. Since we hear leasing, you need to pay rent or those type of things. So I wanted to know, on it, are we as South Africans going to have to pay lease? Are they going to be rates, or are you going to be charged? It's just going to be a lease so that you can be able to stay to that land, and how long you're going to have it. It will just end there, or are they going to be rates included? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Wow, that was a translation of what the presentation was about, which makes me say maybe the purpose of the day is being fulfilled. But however, please note the question, and I'll take the rest of the two, and then we'll answer the speaker. So I have my brother right there. You can come.
Thank you.
Just no press there. It's great.
All right, thank you very much, Chair, for a vivid picture of what the EFF intends to do when it takes over government. However, the numbers of an upper chair, Amabunu, they had a land bow, wherein they used the land bow to dispossess our people of their land and give it to Amakaka, Ahale Nordwijk. In the case of Bloemfontein, and give it to Amakaka, Ahlala and Nordwijk. So my question, Chair, is, does the EFF have a mechanism like Leamabun, a land bow, wherein they will use that mechanism to adequately redistribute the land to the deserving masses? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Father, for the question. And that's it. You can come, my brother.
Thank you very much. Nami ndithi danki kuChair ngokusibekela yona lula ngokwendlela elula abantu abanokuthi bayivisise ngayo. Amen. Ndiqale environment. So into ebenzoyibuza ukuthi nje usually batho abangathi abagabotsa taba for you're going to expropriate the land and compensation, and you are going to constitute it, but they don't understand indlela apho iconstitutwa ngayo. They don't understand ukubana maybe bacinga umhlawumbe sothatha isidubula sithi from the day EFF clock 29 May, that from the 30th the land will be expropriated without compensation. They don't understand for finally see a parliament, then from the parliament there will be 2/3 majority and stuff. So what do we mean? There will be legislative measures taken the constitution yethu ifake like kusitsho section number 25 apho, and kukho ipart ethethileyo which is nayo engichazileyo ukubana about foreign land ngikata foreign. We look like the government every foreigner to come and dwell with us, but then we are the only government as a introducer policy as a restrictor the land from being sold to any foreign nationals. So anything is similarly to that one. But now ingase ngaya deep ukubana yes there is indlela apho EFF as claim and it is a representative of the poor, the proletariats, like the working class of our people. So ingaba in this redistribution, because of we had ingxaki apha after apartheid, I believe in 1994, when the power was shifted back now to the black people, I believe now there were some parts of the community or the parts of some parts of the municipalities that were not developed as some, due to the fact that people that were in position were not maybe equipped, the knowledge, the know-how of how to run a municipality. Remember the education system that we used in the apartheid was that one that we have to be workers. So now the power, when it was shifted, then you have to be now the leading of the public. Then some parts of the Africans, there's a struggle, there's a shaking, even though the ANC government or the government of the black people, there's a shaking because of abantu abaye in positions abakwazi ukuyibamba. Now we are saying abantu abamnyama asina's jobs. We are not even learning in agriculture because of, even though singenamali, this agriculture siyithathele nakho to webona. So now masithi sesiyithathile expropriation, now we are redistributing it. What measures are we going to take to make sure that this person that is simnika lo mhlaba uzosebenzisa to its maximum capacity? We don't look like, I believe there are states that thought that they have different in one of his writings that if I think it was in Spain, where this communist party took power for a few months because of they never had a proper planning on how are they going to do izinto abathe bafuna ukuzenza. So in abantwini abamnyama bangena nix khona ngokunabo umhlaba, you will need money ukubana mawuthenge seed. Not only that, you need tractors to plow. You need how are they going to be funded? We know they are there, but angasicacisela for abantu abangafumani ukubana bangafunda this constitution now nokuyivisisa ngokwendlela engayo, because it's written in English and our people siyayifunda as an additional language. Yeah. So
no, thank you so much for that. So Justin, can you please concisely respond to those questions and then we move to the next round of things?
Okay. Thank you very much, my brother. Thank you for questions. I think all of them are very progressive. I, however, wanted to limit my presentation to land and human settlement. I realize that the questions are far more broader than that. I however, will attempt to answer all of them. First, let's start the questions that were posed by Lindell. I'll say question, not necessarily questions. I think a whole lot of what she said was also an input, but she also says that EFF is very lenient lately, or appears very lenient when it comes to issues of land, perhaps redistribution or access or expropriation of land. You would know that we're not in government yet. So the leniency might be brought, or the limitations of EFF as an organization is brought by us because we're not in government. And part of the land that we're talking about is the land that is owned by the state, land that is owned by a municipality. So we are forcefully taking it, and people would know that we forcefully took land almost everywhere, in every municipality in this country. So I would not really say it's leniency. I'd say that's the radical nature of the EFF. They did not wait for them. They did not run around and say, vote for us only after you voted for us. And that in its own self, manifesto. It's not a city promises, commitment. So EFF it maintains that radical character. But the leasing part that perhaps came forward as a question, leasing ya lefatshe, I'll answer it in twofold. Agricultural leasing, and there'll also be leasing ya property. So the EFF government shall identify a space where it builds a specific block of flats, a specific complex. I get to build this complex, we allow people to come lease at a very reasonable price. Because why leasing? If we can go for ownership, you might realize Lindeloy is owning a house somewhere in Pretoria, and Lindeloy in Bloemfontein. Why should we give Lindeloy a house in Pretoria, or land for building a house in Pretoria? Equally give her again. But here, over just proximity from cities. Maybe there are certain professions that you would not ordinarily get. If, for example, you are a miner by profession, you would not get a mining company codes one day. So you might be owning a house there, but this time you want to lease just in case. So that's why we clearly would emphasize on 99-year lease agreement. But and I'm also trying to speak to the mechanism, should we realize that Lindelwa has fooled us as EFF government and claimed that now I'm going to use this leased property or this leased complex for Todula, and then Lindelwa will be conduct some business or we rent out for any other purpose except what is intended for, will not hesitate both to prosecute but at the same time to evict Lindelwa. And this eviction will be lawful on the basis that you have fooled us and you've lied to us. And this thing is meant for people. This complex, this property is meant for people who will be working here, and just for balimon of a purpose is fair. So from time to time we'll discharge the official government establishment. Is this thing still being used for what is intended for? And that is how we'll run. There will be people who are not only dealing with property, residential, but equally will be conducting oversight for purposes that agricultural property as well. And I think there was also attempting to answer Horena. Will EFF have the mechanisms? Because you would have a land bow, any pusher, that policy are whites, apartheid, to ensure that whites would have the spaces there. And I mean, for example, Hilton was meant for whites. I mean, you get there, you realize, but even this site, was meant for residential. It's far bigger than what ANC is giving to us. The size, they are far more, smaller, that when you get RDP, you don't feel, but I'm a resident in my own space, in my own yard. So EFF will speak, I think will be in conjunction with the town planners, will try and give spacious houses, generally spacious sites. The restaurant dignity. Remember, housing and land is meant for that, for identity, for dignity of a black person. You can't really call yourself South Africans now because, I mean, what part of South Africa are you owning? And that's a mockery. I mean, if a Chinese can come here, I have dual status. I want to own a part of China. I want to own a portion of South Africa. They are more South African than you are. So you can't really tell us that you are a South African. Such that look MMO and tell but you are foreigners. You can't even own anything because you are a foreigner. You've got no right to call yourself a South African because you do not own anything South African or a piece of land to be called South African. Now, when I come to issues, the legislative measures, you'll remember that in Parliament, where the main duty of Parliament is to make laws. So when you make laws, part of what you are targeting is the supreme law, which is the Constitution. However, you are correct when you are saying a Constitution, you just don't tamper with it without having a specific majority, which is 2/3 in this case. And I know EFF in that motion that section 25 be altered and if who expropriate the facts. there were, I will not really call it referendum, but there was a process of public participation, and that is what is enshrined in the Constitution of South Africa. You don't change laws, you must change them because they are pro the needs about or the wants about. So as most South Africans, especially Kamlomwa EFF in Parliament, so EFF government, like for purposes about banana, any form, either over liberator economically or over who restore dignity that they have a form of human settlement or housing of some sort. So really EFF, we're still going to conduct that process. Re-able to public participation, get diffused the majority, which I believe majority here will be more black people than anything else. If they say we give it a go ahead, which they already said, I don't think ANC is truthful by saying that they're still sticking to William Bayer, William Sir. They are just expressing the policy stubborn, but on the ground we know our people want land, and they do it in any form. Protest of some sort, like we do, we see it everywhere. People settle because they want land. People occupy because they want land. People just go there and erect a shack because they really want land. So that's a form of protest I believe EFF will take into consideration when they are legislating, especially in relation to land. And I'm honest to you when I say, my brother, no foreign national. And I know when I speak of foreign national, most people think of black foreign nationals, African brothers like myself, even Chinese. In Bloemfontein, I can tell you there's a place there called Mandela View that is owned by a Chinese. There's a place there in the North Twinkie, this expensive place, what do they call it? Yeah, some of these things, they are owned by these foreigners. And now, foreigner in this case is a foreigner who does not have a South African identity document. But they are allowed. They can come here and say, hey, who develop our land. Some of them come, these guys are being property developers. They come here, they buy land, they develop it. Where now who's a bona fide citizen in South Africa, you come buy a house there. They even tell you how to live there. Music how loud. That's how they are in control, because in actual fact you bought a land, but you don't really own it. The owners are actually these foreigners. And I'm yet to be convinced that there's a black person from Africa, a black African brother who has bought land in South Africa, developed it. Majority of them you find that they are white and pale. This part I can tell you for free. Indeed, the land for plowing, like I said, I wanted to limit my discussion for just land and human settlement, or land for purposes of human settlement. However, EFF will ensure that whoever, remember, when it comes to now where you're going to make profit, where you're going to liberate yourself using land. Land is not yours. Land is ours as the EFF government. And I mean, when I mean ours, it's ours, their people. It is our land, it just gets administered on our behalf by the EFF Socialist government. So it will say to you, who wants land here for purposes of agriculture and farming? Agro-processing, any form of agriculture. Just in livestock farming, no problem, as long as it's agriculture. Then you make an application. You get some assistance until you are stable. But the lease agreement you'll sign with the EFF government will only be 99 years. And that's where slightly things change as opposed to land for human settlement, where we'll even fight for you to get your own house that you bought using a bank. Because you can't expropriate land when a person has bought a house, when a person has owned it for purposes of human settlement. But if is Fighter Tamsang who want to own 12 farms because he has money, buy them and die in the process and hand them over as legacy to his sons who might not even want to farm, I think that's wrong, because you are owning land even when you are dead. So in this case where we are was speaking of lease agreement, you will not own it as an individual. We will own it on behalf of everyone. As EFF government will own it on behalf of Occupy because they want land. People just go there and erect a shack because they really want land. So that's a form of protest I believe EFF will take into consideration when they are legislating, especially in relation to land. And I'm honest to you when I say, my brother, no foreign national. And I know when I speak of foreign national, most people think of black foreign nationals, African brothers like myself, even Chinese. In Bloemfontein, I can tell you there's a place there called Mandela View that is owned by a Chinese. There's a place there in the North Twinkie, this expensive place, what do they call it? Yeah, some of these things, they are owned by these foreigners. And now, foreigner in this case is a foreigner who does not have a South African identity document, but they are allowed. They can come here and say, "Hey, who develop our land?" Some of them come. These guys are being property developers. They come here, they buy land. They develop it. Where now who's a bona fide citizen in South Africa, you come buy a house there. They even tell you how to live there. Music how loud. That's how they are in control, because in actual fact you bought a land, but you don't really own it. The owners are actually these foreigners. And I'm yet to be convinced that there's a black person from Africa, a black African brother who has bought land in South Africa, developed it. Majority of them you find that they are white and pale. This part I can tell you for free. Indeed, the land for plowing, like I said, I wanted to limit my discussion for just land and human settlement, or land for purposes of human settlement. However, EFF will ensure that whoever, remember, when it comes to now where you're going to make profit, where you're going to liberate yourself using land. Land is not yours. Land is ours as the EFF government. And I mean, when I mean ours, it's ours, their people. It is our land. It just gets administered on our behalf by the EFF Socialist government. So it will say to you, who wants land here for purposes of agriculture and farming? Agro-processing, any form of agriculture. Just in livestock farming, no problem, as long as it's agriculture. Then you make an application. You get some assistance until you are stable. But the lease agreement you'll sign with the EFF government will only be 99 years. And that's where slightly things change as opposed to land for human settlement, where we'll even fight for you to get your own house that you bought using a bank. Because you can't expropriate land when a person has bought a house, when a person has owned it for purposes of human settlement. But if is Fighter Thompson who want to own 12 farms because he has money, buy them and die in the process and hand them over as legacy to his sons who might not even want to farm. I think that's wrong, because you are owning land even when you are dead. So in this case where we're speaking of lease agreement, you will not own it as an individual. We will own it on behalf of everyone. As EFF government will own it on behalf of everyone. And when we do that, then you come, you apply, we give you lease, and we keep on checking from time to time. Are you doing what you said you are going to do? Are you not threatening our food security? Are you not keeping us as hungry as we are now? You claimed when you are able, you can produce food. Where there are challenges, of course, we are willing, especially if you are coming from the background, they are disadvantaged. We're willing to assist. But we can't just take your house and say we are expropriating. But where there's a need, for example, if there's a need that we need to expropriate a property because of a greater good. For example, if there's a clinic, but Baba clinic, and your house perhaps is in a strategic area where we can build a clinic. Of course, even when we relocate you, you'll get the same value of property, maybe even in the same area. the benefits are the same clinic, but it will be for a greater good. Where if you are not satisfied, you will go to the higher court of law and then you voice your dissatisfaction. There's that look at that specific court that is meant to deal with the issues. If you feel Marmona, the government is over, but the greater good must always, or the public use of your land must always supersede the individual use. So we'll always weigh the rights when it comes to expropriation. I think that covers almost all the. Although I wanted to limit, I got slightly taken up when we spoke about land and agricultural land and farming.
No, it's fine. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. Because seemingly it's more than just rhetoric, but it's blend down to detail. So I'll take the second round of questions. If you have a question, you just raise your hand, you introduce yourself, and you pose a question to the speaker. So I have my brother there, my brother there, and my brother there. And thank you. You can go, my brother.
Thank you very much. Chair, I want to ask you this question. Since you mentioned that our people, like the land was taken through violence, do you think the land issue can be resolved peacefully? Number one. Number two, in terms of mines, in Western Cape, the government in Western Cape, they have given black people mining licenses, and we have a problem of zamazamas all over South Africa. What is the EFF government going to do in relation to that? How are they going to solve the problem of zamazamas and also creating opportunities for those people who want to do mining? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Lebitso la ke Motao. Nna ne ke kopa ho botsa since well ke tseba this thing ya land ha sa le bua ka ona tloa gale ebile bontate ba bone ba bang ba ile ba hlokana. Ho ntso bua ka yona le hona jena ntse re bua ka ona. So ne ke kopa ho botsa as an EFF hore na EFF yona e tlo etsa eng hore this thing ya land e gone ho distributiwa mo bathong ba ileng ba ihloka because of ha re checka re fumana hore more than 30 years o tso bua ka hore land le tla iswa bathong ba le hlokang, but then if you check how ntho e tsalang, so EFF yona e tlo stop those processes ya hore if e dula stulong then batho ba ile hore ba hloka lefatshe ba le fumana. And again, since wa le re tseba hore lefatshe le wetse maburung haholo, batho ba ile hore ba le hloka ba le fumana, ana really ba tla kgona ho lwantsha maburu or ba fumane lefatshe without or ba patale back. So ke kopa ho botsa fela hore EFF na really ya dumela hore na if e dula pushong a tla nka lefatshe e le fe batho ba le hlokang na. And again ke utlwa ho bua ka anti-mass commission hore if mohlomong ke Motau then ke owner mohlomong pleke kae then ha ke hlokahala that pleke no yana e dula le pleke ya ka. So ka nako e leng hore EFF mohlomong e tla be le yona e dintse setulong, ana it means that if ke hlokahala that pleke ha eno ba ka ba pleke e welang mo mmushong na. So ke tsona questions tse ke kopa ho di botsa. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. My name is Tafazwa, and my question revolves around the what is called the pillars or the cardinal principles or non-negotiable principles. I have no doubt that EFF will take over government at some point, given the demographics. But my question is relates to number one. If you look at all the basic health, free basic health, expropriation, those kind of things give investors problems, right? We hate capital, but it's necessary to fund, these activities in the health sector, in education, and all of these things. And we also want jobs, right? So so there are some kind of contradictions inherent. Also, the major question coming from Africa, right? We've seen what people can do when they have, in control they're in control of the judiciary 100%, in control of, the state sometimes can become, a problem. And also, also the other question is, what do you think about private sector development in the way that it's articulated in the manifesto? We have, in South Africa, it's a young population, everyone. So, and people are very vibrant, and they don't want to be restricted. They want to do things the way everyone is a rolling stone, they say, isn't it? So if you have, there are these tensions that, when you're in power, I don't know if, you have had time to think about it. So those are my comments.
Thank you so much for these questions. Chairperson, can once more concisely respond to that?
Okay, no, thank you very much once more. I think I'll follow the sequences. Questions were asked. Tabang asked about the land issue now. Do we think it will be resolved peacefully because it was taken forcefully, violently, using the barrel of the gun? Is it possible that we can? For now, the EFF, when we formed it, 2013, really go Uncle Tom's in Soweto, we had agreed with ourselves and everyone else. Parliamentary route, meaning parliament, peacefully, and parliament does not mean peacefully. We're a protest movement, and that character follows us everywhere we go, even when we're in parliament. And Leona Parliament itself is a contested space. So we're not going to go there and put them secretly again. That will not happen. I suspect if Kereke Leona was implicated in ruling over us, as is the case in Vatican, would also protest against change, unfortunately. So I'm saying, for now, we're still peaceful. We're still peaceful until all other means necessary to restore the means of production, bring back land, restore the dignity of our people. Until those measures are blocked, only then you see the revolutionary nature of the EFF, the radical nature. But for now, we've agreed, the founding manifesto says that. For now, we are prepared to explore the parliamentary route, and we believe, by so doing, that's if the constitution we ever drafted then, it remains to be tested. Or na Regalonka Lefati using the same parliamentary route. And I believe the only people who can test that is the EFF. So peacefully, we are willing to explore that route. So in Mameland today, we have changed laws. The laws say we take the land and we take the land. And whoever is using the land to maximize the profit, we are taking it. We'll now share amongst our people, prioritize those that have been locked out of the economy, which in this case, majority black people. So we'll do just that, I think, peacefully. When it comes to issue studies Zamazama, or what is otherwise known as the artisanal miners, well, let's quickly break it down here. These people are called Zamazamas. They are given this wrong title because they are mining illegally. and they are barred by laws. The very laws of South Africa which allow foreigners, they get given mining rights. But where do they mine? Inside our country. The very country, mine. For example, I can tell you for free, mine was Jacques Fontaine, the BS in mining right, this allow anybody to go mine. Their reason was no sinality. The same DBA came back. After years, but I'm a mine because water is used all when they mine. All of a sudden, see for any infrastructural development, there's none in Jacques Fontaine, but the BS comes back with Kaba mine. So I'm merely saying to you, but what? Kid outcasts in their own land, kid outcasts because they are poor, they are trying to use natural resources to live. And now EFF is saying, we're going to be a government that's going to be on your side of the downtrodden, those who are called Zama. We'll even give them, because we're a socialist government, we're not holding everything for ourselves. We'll even give them artisanal rights to go mine. But majority of the mines, which is part of what? Why do we want mines? We want education for free. Various other things for free. Healthcare, equality for free. And such that life here, a black person finds meaning, at least inside South Africa. So artisanal mining and zamas will be well catered for. But I bet you, because we are a socialist government, will still accommodate a bit of capital. So the private sector in our government will have a role to play. And this private sector will use EFF developmental government to push the people who have been locked out of the economy, by that sector economy. So these zamas, they prove to have skill. They have a will. It's the only knowledge they have. Let them use it to better their lives. And where they can do, the EFF will own a mine on their behalf. Basebeleze puso. Jwale ka motho a sebeletsa lefapheng la bophelo bo botle, motho a sebetsa lefapheng la thekolelo, ona o tlo sebetsa lefapheng la di-mine, a sebeletsa puso, re mo fe medical aid, and everything that every worker at state would get. So you'll have those people who are working there privately in the mines, but you'll have people. But we want nationalization, where state has majority shareholding in these sectors of economy. But that does not mean total lockout of everyone. So it's not wholesale, but it's meant that the state at least takes some for the poor of the poor, the downtrodden masses, at least gives them to better the lifestyle. And Fighter or EFF is to redistribute land to our people. In fact, EFF is the delay so type of government to stand up for our people. So they've given land and continuously I don't think it's in the nature EFF when Cardinal Pillar number 1 says expropriation to stop when they get to government or forward of Alpha. If you can ask more, notion is now becoming I don't know if you've seen even other political parties. They now are leading sporadic land occupations. And we appreciate that. You know why we appreciate it? It means we've started an ideal that will be so run even without us. And that's what we want. For EFF, for our people. So if you started it and the people take it over, it becomes the revolution of the people, and like Lenin is putting it, revolution becomes the festival of the masses in that way. So EFF indeed is in the government thing, criminal on but we need to rebear in systems such that nobody comes tomorrow. I don't know if I said it in my presentation. We're also going to criminalize a person who comes in your property when EFF has allocated you a piece of land about get expropriated. That part we are going to, because in this way we'll say you have a right to occupy, you have a right to stay. And EFF will not even battle against white people. We have got no intentions. These are our people. we love them. We know there are pockets of white people who would want to go against the EFF, who would want to go against the socialist government. But when laws are in place, we just enforce them using police and military if necessary. But I doubt law will need military. When we say we take this one, even if you would want to create some form of a sitting because you believe or it's unfair, we'll give you time to go to court, settle your matter, but the EFF government will, for a greater good of everybody, will always place the majority needs. Individual need. So I bet you, my brother, we will not fight with white people unless they have it in history. In their history, in fact, they fought us. They've killed us. They killed for the land, but Rona shame, we surrendered it peacefully. We are a defeated nation, and we're intending to use government to restore back our land. Not for us, by the way. To share it, it's meant for all of us. So some people would want to pocket it by pocketing and call it their own. No. It was given to us. By virtue of us being African, we're given this land. We must just share it and make use of the land. We're going to leave it behind, by the way, when we die. That whoever remains behind also continue using the land. The land is like water and everything else. So you can't pocket the farmers at Western Cape when there was something like day zero. Or by this side, or no, we'll give you bikinya, because they block the water, the streams and everything. Some are owned because that stream passes through their land. So we want to deal with that. Land is just that natural resource that all of us must be able to use. But we must have a system in place how to own, not really own. That's why we say the state will own it as the people, but the state will administer it on our behalf. So that's where we are. So when you die, my brother, if your property is a settlement property, we'll agree that we can't somehow your children out of your house because you are dead. There must still be decent South Africans who have a decent housing. Will ensure that there are more the Motau families living here. And because their father is dead, we can't use the might of the state to hoy them out. But when you die and you signed lease agreement, a contract with us here 99 years, and you are dead, and you said, now I want to farm here, kitlo flower the cabbage, kitlo flower spinach. Unfortunately, when you die, legally, that contract somewhere also dies off. And it's not your agricultural land, by the way. We'll nicely take it and look on the lease here and the database here who has applied for land again. And that person who has applied will also get a chance to farm and liberate themselves economically. Because I think lately we've allowed, or South Africa, or the ANC itself has allowed a stage where agriculture as an economic sector is controlled by white people. If Baba decide to just stay away and decide not to farm, it says that all of us, survival is threatened, and that's not what we should allow. That's why the state has to play a central role. My brother, I think he said his name is Kotat. Yes, I don't want to butcher it. Investors always have a role to play, but they'll play a role with our terms. People go to many African countries. Belgium does that. France does that. They go to former colonized countries. They go there. They tell you here you still pay a fee to us for nonsensical issues, and they call themselves investors. And I'm using the term carefully because we think that Africans cannot survive and run a country. Although some have proven not to be able to run a country, and I'll explain this whenever I get given a chance to speak about governance. But most people believe that Africans will not be able to run a country. So investors will come. For example, we have investors here in Africa. Anglo-American, American-Swiss. We've got investors. Your loan mean is an investor. You know why they call themselves investors? It's because they take our own minerals out, go beneficiate them elsewhere, and we now must be scared that we'll lose these people, and as such, when we lose them, we lose jobs. We lose jobs because we do not have a thinking government. And EFF government has it all planned and mapped out that we really don't need any investor. Because investor, what does an investor bring? It brings in capital. That same capital, we can get it from the government. Start a mining company, a government-owned mining company. We employ you. You come work for us. You use your skill. You leave. Your children are able to leave. And there's no threat that one day you'll be up and gone. Same way, same investors that almost all the time we get threatened that they leave. They leave in jail. Just without even us provoking them, they leave. They can leave and tell you, no, but here people have too much rights, labor rights, and then they leave. So they still have a role to play because we're a socialist government. Will allow private sector space to play, but equally, government will play a role economically on behalf of our people, even giving them space to play. When we speak of private sector, we must also include that there are downtrodden people in South Africa. Black people ordinarily were locked out. So they'll come back as private sector. Private sector should not be deemed white, as is the case now in South Africa. Because when you speak of private sector, you're actually speaking of white businessmen, white males who are. So we'll allow them, develop them independently to play space, to play a role in our economy. So private sector, of course, will do that. We'll even trade with other African countries, and that's what we're intending. And I'll explain this later on, but for now, I think, we just hate capital the way it does things to us. And we do not hate, we don't hate capital as when it does things in the best interest of all. But we hate capital if it dictates, takes lives, and maximize profit for everything. I mean, for you, when you get TB, capital will dictate that you must not get any pharmaceutical products from South Africa. Why? Because South Africa in its own self has even barred itself from having a pharmaceutical company. I don't know how that makes sense. But capital allows that. In fact, why? Because they want everyone to come to them, buy their own pills. When you have capacity, you've produced pharmacists and everyone else who can create these things. It's just that they're not allowed. And they even would give us their pendant rights. We don't mind going there, buy or refer a recipe of making this tuberculosis medication because our people are dying. ARVs, we run the biggest ARVs. So why are we not producing for ourselves? It's because we, of course, with the influence of capital, have locked ourselves out of our own economy. And that is done by the ANC government. And the ANC EFF government, when it comes in, it's due to stop that. And state, at times in many African countries, it becomes problematic, of course. And if a state is on the side of the downtrodden, I think that's the state I say I will vouch for. But a state that is on the side of the few, a minority like the South African state, South African ANC-led government, is on the side of white people. They want to maintain the niceties that white people are getting. They want to retain their land. That's why they want to go back to them, buy a stolen property, a stolen land from them, which does not really make sense. Because you become an accomplice to a crime. I steal a cell phone. You come back and buy it. Because we find it on you, you must also equally get arrested. So South African ANC-led government wants to go back to whites who have stolen from us, to give them money to buy back land, and we must clap for them and say they have bought back the land, which is not really the case. This land is meant for all of us. We can use it must just be properly administered, and that's what white people and everyone else must just understand. So I don't think the EFF government will have it hard we have trained ideologically, trained fighters who are already trained to deal with the issues that government. And like I said, private sector should not be a problem. They are our brothers. They must just see themselves as the role players like us. But capital has got this bad mentality of locking everyone. It has got this monopoly mentality. That's why they lock it from production to distribution to up until retail. They lock it there, and when you want to play a role there, there's no way to play, because when your truck, you are a developing distributor, so your truck is not proper and all of that. But I'm just merely, I get taken up when I think I must limit my discussion to land and human settlement. I don't want to mix your issues, and then tomorrow when people come here, but there's a representation, things are already presented.
Okay, no, thank you so much. Unfortunately, at times, time itself can be an enemy of progress. So that brings us to an end of today's episode. Komsa Coach, thank you so much for translating for us the strategic direction that the EFF intends to take with the country. And to our live audience, thank you for engaging questions. Meet you in the next episode of EFF Manifesto Mondays.
Thank you.